Yeah, hi. Just to share some experience that we had with our instance, we are not running the latest and greatest. We are actually a few versions behind,
Hmm.
so some of it may be outdated. Um, with regards to the discussion on the security scheme, right? The feeling that I get when we do that is that it does what it does. It's actually not too bad.
Hmm.
It just lack a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more options to stretch the last mile. So right now I'm going around jumping through hoops trying to get things done for strange requests from my users.
Hmm.
My users are strange. So what to do? So if that can be broadened a little bit, it will be nice. The other thing to address is Jira has a very powerful workflow engine.
Hmm.
Um, I abused it quite a number of times. You can ask around for that one among the panelists later. Um, the thing is, if the advice is the core, and I do agree with you that the core engine is strong, but leave some room for expansion for specialist people to come in. But over time, there's always a bit of, I wish this thing was in the workflow engine.
Hmm.
It got to the point where we had to get a alternative plugin to do certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, we end up deriving value from that, so not too bad lah. The problem was, um, and one of the things that was brought up during the conversion thing, right? If you have too many plugins,
Hmm.
and some of the plugin authors go out of business, and they do, then you can be stuck without a way to upgrade
Hmm.
to the next version, and that becomes dangerous. And we actually hit that problem not with Jira, because for Jira, I took one look at the situation. I say, unless you can tell me there's a business benefit, I'm not going to add this plugin in. And I left it at that. I left the Jira server running. It ran for months on end without a problem. Thank you. And happiness.
Yeah.
On the Confluence side, which was ran by a different team, they started to add a lot of plugins in. So eventually, when they had to do an upgrade, they ran into a lot of problems with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So you had to, there must be a balance, and hopefully there is a review process that says, oh, a lot of people are using this particular functionality, we should include it into the core engine. Ideally, that would be the case.
Yeah.
Then, what was the last item I was going to say? In terms of data analytics that was brought up earlier,
Hmm.
I hope that in moving forward, there will be some consideration about how to get the data out. I mean, right now it's actually not terrible. You have to do certain things in order to get Jira to cough out certain information. But once you get used to it, it does happen fairly well. I actually have to end up doing quite a bit of weird things in ClickView in order to extract information from Jira and jump through certain hoops. It'll be nice if it's easier, but I can work with that. I'm just quite happy that you can come up in a format that we can use.
Okay.
So that's quite nice.
Okay, so I heard three main themes there that I want to touch back on. And I'll leave the data extraction maybe for one of the partners, but the first two that you addressed in terms of security and plugin use. So security I touched on a little bit in the morning session on some of the product improvements in the server version. In addition to being just a user or a board admin, there's also a project admin and the sysadmin, right? And that project admin can now have extended rights. So that we're starting to slowly open that up a bit more so that you don't have to do as many, what I heard you describing, kind of unnatural things for your weird users, but we all have weird Jira users. That's just part of the game. But we'll continue to open that up and give you a bit more flexibility on the security front. So stay tuned for that. In terms of the plugins, it's one of the reasons why I was really pleased along the lines of migration and upgrading. First of all, taking an inventory, just regardless of whatever you're doing. If you ever look to move, your mileage will vary, right? Not every plugin is on every version. If it's on cloud, it may not be on server, it may not be on data center. You definitely want to track that over time. Also, in terms of usage, we do track the usage metrics. We know all the most commonly used Jira add-ons and Confluence add-ons and so on. I don't know so much as if that necessarily will be indicative on how much of that we productize, but what we do use it for is ensuring that those add-ons are as available as possible across deployment options. So again, you still want to check, you still want to take your full inventory. But for example, when Data Center first came out, of course, the trickle over to have add-ons actually certified to run in data center was a bit slow initially. We reached out and worked proactively with those key add-on vendors and said, right, we're going to give you a resource. Here's our testing tools. Here's some other things that we can do. Let's get your add-on certified so that all of our users will be able to more seamlessly move across options. So not quite what you were looking for, but at least we're trying to keep that parity best as we can. And even though server to data center is the same code line, as you called out earlier, it's a multi-threaded, multi-node environment, right? And so when you spin up an add-on, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work the same. Just because it worked fine on server, you can find some warts on it when you spin it up in data center. So testing and certifying is really important. And we've formalized a bit of the framework around that. And again, continue to work with those most widely used to ensure you've got some range on that as well. Any thoughts from any of you guys on, he talked about data extraction as well. Anything you guys have seen on how to make that a bit easier? I know it fits a bit more into migration, but I don't know what all you guys have seen.
For the plugins, okay, basically for our customers, because usually we do recommend a solution is actually comprised of Jira or Confluence and a suite of plugins depending on the requirements. So how we have a set of criteria means, like, for example, you might want to see whether the plugin is established, how many users are there, then the reviews and the publisher of the plugins, is it established? You don't go for those independent one. Okay, that's why there's always a risk if using a free add-on. But if you use a commercial one, there's likely is funded and it's more sustainable. So, and yeah, we are also a marketplace publisher. So sort of we understand how customers they are worried about all these sort of things. So even to now, we still have not migrated all of them to the data center compatible. But at the same time, we are actually, when customer come in, you can actually send them a ticket, ask them, check out with them. If they respond, see whether they respond fast enough or not. Yeah.
I think that's a good answer. I think with regards to number two, I think one thing is to do the sanity check. Like for me itself, I go to marketplace, I'll check, okay, bad reviews, set aside, no way. Good reviews, I'll see number of usage, I'll see adoption, blog posts and stuff like that. That normally gives you a very high success that you know, and you have to check the kind of like the credibility of the company itself. I think there are some add-ons in that sense, like building it into core features of Jira. One of probably the concerns would be with a huge ecosystem and stuff like that, right? Then if Atlassian now cannibalize, kind of like the partners itself, shooting them in the foot, and getting, I think these are some of the concerns that will come up with in that sense. One of the things I get very annoyed with in my own personal experience is like Bitbucket. So Bitbucket, before it was, I'm talking about Bitbucket server, and back in the old days it was called Stash.
Yep.
Okay, so back in the old days, Stash, and I think not too sure until now itself, it didn't even have a proper network graph in that sense, or rather a commit graph. The graph was always in a main line. You can only check one branch. And I'm like, then after that, I think I asked someone else like, hey, because I'm used to GitHub. I use GitHub, for the past few years. I can see the whole commit thing. And the first thing I normally do to any Bitbucket installation, which I feel it should be there by default, is to go to the marketplace itself to find the commit graph. Even back then there wasn't even a proper plugin for it. Someone had to invent it. I was checking out a few months. And I'm not going to write a commit graph of my own, a plugin of my own, just to do something like that. So it was kind of annoying. I felt these are kind of like features that should have been there in the core product itself, and it's not. And until now, it's still supported by plugins in that sense for something that is so core to a product like this.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of something that maybe is a bit more of a candidate to be productized, but yeah, fair point. And spoken like a true community leader in terms of the approach.